My name is Alan
Hey, how are
Wise,
you?
and I'm doing great. I'm the
Excellent.
Associate Provost of Strategic Projects and Professor of Political Science at Vanderbilt University. And along
Wow.
with Craig Volden at the Frank Baden School of Leadership and Public Policy, I co-direct the Center for Effective Lawmaking. And the both of us
Wonderful.
are absolutely thrilled to welcome Congressman Gus Bilirakis, who's represented Florida in the U.S. House of Representatives since 2007. As many of you know, the congressman represents Florida's 12th congressional district, which geographically is located on the Gulf Coast and includes Citrus, Hernando, and portions of Pasco counties. Representative Bilirakis received his bachelor's degree in political science, so that's something that Craig and I are very excited about, at the University of Florida, and he also received his JD at Stetson University. Prior to serving in the U.S. House, the congressman practiced law, specializing in probate and estate planning, and he was also elected to the Florida State House in 1998, where he served for 8 years prior to being elected to the U.S. House. Now, during his time in Congress, the congressman has distinguished himself from his peers in many notable ways in regards to his engagement with the legislative process. And according to our data at the Center for Effective Lawmaking, his high level of lawmaking effectiveness has extended across his career. In fact, he holds one of the longest active streaks of being in our prestigious exceeds expectations in lawmaking effectiveness category. In other words, he's notably more successful at advancing his sponsored bills through the legislative process compared to other legislators, other representatives who are in similar positions to himself in regard to their majority party standing, with their seniority, and whether or not they hold committee or subcommittee chairs. It's also the case that he's regularly recognized as the most effective lawmaker in the state, Florida's congressional delegation, as well as being recognized quite often as being among the top 10 most effective lawmakers among House Republicans. So, Congressman Bilirakis, we are so excited to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us for a Center for Effective Lawmaking interview.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks
Great.
for doing what you do. Uh, it really makes a difference, and it's good for our constituents to see how effective we are, because we're not. A lot of times, we're not the people that get the headlines. So but we focus on passing good, responsible legislation on both sides of the aisle.
Right. Well, that's great to hear. And that's very much the mission of what we're trying to accomplish here. To that end, as we just discussed a few minutes ago, we're going to be asking you a series of fairly general questions that asks you or allows you to think about your background and how does it influence your perspective on the lawmaking process. And we'd really love to hear from you with any specific examples across your career that might come to mind to help fill out some of the details behind some of the questions we're asking. So to that end, what I'd actually like to do is take a step back well before you're elected to Congress to talk a bit about your background and the ways in which it really shapes your perspectives as a lawmaker now that you're in Washington, D.C. So as some viewers might not be aware, quite early in your life, you already really had significant political interactions in a variety of contexts with different leaders. Your father actually served in the U.S. House from the early 1980s until the time that you filled the seat. But even before that, it was also the case that you served as an intern to President Ronald Reagan. And Craig and I, and I'm sure our viewers would be interested to hear really how those early experiences shaped your perspective on public service and your outlook as a legislative policymaker.
I've always wanted to serve in some capacity. Even in high school, I remember we did a recording for my high school graduation. I said I was going to be uh, in some capacity serving in Washington D.C., possibly as a legislator. I interned for Bill McCollum while I was in high school. He was a good legislator, strong legislator for many years from Florida. Uh, I've always, again, been fascinated with politics and getting things done and having the ability or being placed in a position to serve others. My father was not a politician, but he was drafted to run for Congress. I was probably on number one on the committee for. He always tells me that I kind of pushed him over to public service, even though. We used to go to all the civic associations, and he'd volunteer on a regular basis. Many was, members of quite a few civic organizations, but also veterans organizations, because he served during Korea overseas. So I think that's probably even my mom's side. My grandmother was not an elected official. They were immigrants from Greece. On both, actually, all four of my grandparents immigrated to the United States, but she served on a committee, and she was president for over 20 years, the Philoptochos Society, which means helping the poor. And she was very instrumental in helping various families that needed help during the wars, but also after that. And she could speak English, so we grew up in an immigrant community. So she would help them, get assistance from different programs. And they appreciated that very much. So I witnessed that over the years. And I think that had a lot to do with it. But I'll be honest with you, I was watching the conventions, the political conventions. My dad said, you should be watching cartoons. I was in second grade. So I always wanted to serve in D.C. It was a dream of mine. And then Ronald Reagan came along, and I volunteered on his campaign. And I got invited to the inauguration with my parents. And it was a grassroots effort on my part. Again, just as a volunteer, but I was always fascinated and looked up to President Reagan as well.
Yeah, I mean, getting that background is so helpful to us, and let me second Alan's thanks for joining us today. We're fascinated by what problems effective lawmakers decide to focus their attentions on, and so maybe you could step us through kind of how did you see the problems you were addressing when you were first elected to the Florida House of Representatives, and then how did your outlook change as you moved from the state house to Congress?
Well, I kind of adapted in the legislature because you're assigned a particular committee, maybe based on your. I practiced law for many years, as you said, estate planning and residential real estate in a blue collar town, uh, and so I had a little knowledge in property, real property, and estate planning. So they put me on the real property and
Hmm.
probate committee initially, and not really having much. I wasn't a litigator, but they placed me on a public safety committee, substantive committee, and then subsequently they put me on the. I chaired that particular committee, the Public Safety Committee, but also I chaired the Public Safety Appropriations Committee the next term. So I dealt with it. I had a law partner by the name of Elizabeth Hitos, who we practiced law, and she did criminal defense. She was a prosecutor prior to that, so that helped a lot. I asked her a lot of questions. So that's what I was dealt that hand, and I excelled in doing that. Um, and then also, when I went to Congress, I always wanted to serve on the healthcare committee, partially because my dad was chair of the. I'll be honest with you. I mean, he was a great role model for me, and he still is. But healthcare is something very important to my constituents. Access to quality healthcare, affordable healthcare. So I did it. I dabbled a little bit in that. In the legislature, I supported the community health centers sponsor legislation, access legislation. As a matter of fact, it was in my office now. I saw 4 or 5 appointments in my office before this. So that was very important to me. So I strive to be on the Energy and Commerce Committee because of the vast jurisdiction and healthcare in particular. But veterans have, I grew up in the VFWs, the American Legions, so I knew the sacrifices that our veterans have made on behalf of us. And my dad had a track record of helping veterans. So the first thing I did was I asked for the Veterans Committee in Congress. And then, they wanted to put me on financial services, they said, the speaker said, look, you can be on financial services, which is the A committee for freshmen, but they said you wouldn't be able to serve on veterans, and I said, no, 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 no. I have to be on veterans. I represent close to 100,000 veterans, and I want to make that my issue, to help out our true American heroes. So I ended up serving on the Homeland Security Committee, and then Foreign Affairs. I think you guys know that we are very proud of our heritage, the ethnic background, and I followed my dad because he founded the Hellenic Caucus, and then I founded the Hellenic Israel Alliance. Because we have a lot of experience in that area, the Eastern Mediterranean, and it's beneficial to the United States above everything else. So I focused on those issues, but also international issues early in my career, as you know. And then once I got on the Energy and Commerce Committee, I turned to healthcare and retained my position on the Veterans Committee for many years until I became chairman of the it's currently called the Commerce, Manufacturing, and Trade Subcommittee, and the chair of the full committee said you can't be on a second committee. But I am the advisor to the Speaker on Veterans Affairs, so I'm never going to give that up.
Yeah, thanks.
That's a really fascinating discussion or coverage of your trajectory across committees, and I actually want to return to that in a few minutes. But before we do, I actually still want to take a step back to some of your days in the Florida State House, because at the Center for Effective Lawmaking, we've actually recently started to trace the lawmaking effectiveness and lawmaking activities of state legislators in a manner that's analogous to the ways in which we study members of Congress. And as we noticed, exploring your experiences in the Florida State House, you display a really interesting trajectory in the sense that you clearly became a notably more effective or successful legislator and lawmaker across your sessions in the Florida State House. If we think just that from your earliest days until when you concluded, you started to simply see notably more bills ultimately make their way through the legislative process from introduction until becoming law during your earlier to later terms. And we were just curious to know, especially thinking about the ways in which you spend time in the State House before coming to Congress, how would you describe the learning curve that you experienced in the Florida State House? And to what degree do you think that translated pretty naturally to how you hit the ground running once you came to Congress?
The Florida House is a really sophisticated House. I think you know that, in the Senate as well, the Florida Senate. So that was very helpful to me. I got some really good experience. Of course, we have term limits in Florida, so I could only serve the eight years, the 4 years, and so that was very beneficial as well. But watching my father all these years, he never lectured me, but just watching him, and hopefully my kids, get a lot out of watching me, because it's a great sacrifice for them. My brother and I were older. We were at the university when my dad first ran for Congress. So, they grew up. And I'm very attached to my kids, but doing it right, being an effective legislator takes a lot of work and overtime. And I watched my father with the constituent service. That's very important too. I mean, just as important as anything else. And going to places, listening. I think I'm a pretty good listener. I had some disabilities growing up, hearing and visual disabilities, and I had to overcome them. And initially in the legislature, I had a hard time with in the committee rooms, because I had a difficult time hearing. But once the technology improved in the Florida legislature, I got more comfortable. And it takes a lot of confidence too, and you got to build that confidence. And I always knew that my dad never put any pressure on me, but I wanted to. I don't know if it's a great thing, but the most important thing is to retain your name, your reputation. And the name is so very important. You can make all the money in the world, but if you stain your your reputation, and it's not a good thing. So Dad never put any pressure on me. My constituents didn't put any pressure on me. The Greek community did not, but I knew it within. I didn't want to embarrass my father. So, and I think that had a lot to do with it. So I took my job very seriously. Uh, I will tell you this, my law practice suffered for it
Hmm.
because it's a part-time legislature in Florida, but I almost did it full-time because I wanted to do the best I possibly could do to make my dad proud, but also my mom and my constituents and the kids too. I wanted them to look up to me. Uh, Physically, they're taller than I am, literally, but figuratively, I wanted to make sure that they could be proud of their father, and I think that had a lot to do with it. Um, so, yeah, the transition between the Florida House and the U.S. Congress was somewhat easy for me. I know you can ask this question, but the fact that I had a very loyal staff, I brought my two law partners with me. They sacrificed a lot to come to D.C., but I knew I had loyalty. I knew they were very smart. And ultimately, my legislative assistant, Summer Blevins, has been with me for many years as well in the district. So loyalty, brains, but also I retained some of my dad's staff as well initially. Uh, so they stayed on. A lot of them stayed on, both in the district but also in D.C. And then they retired to a certain extent. Some of them did,
Mhm.
but they helped me get started, and they knew that I care for my staff, and I treat them. They are equals, so we do things together. And I like to bounce ideas off of people. That's the way I am. Uh, and then I make the ultimate decision.
Yeah. Yeah. No, thanks for bringing together all of those different elements. I'm, particularly interested in the different jobs that you do as a lawmaker. You were mentioning the constituency services. We've mentioned the lawmaking. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of how those come together? So you hear something from your constituents. Does that turn into legislation down the
Yeah,
road, or
yeah,
maybe an example or two?
yeah. Well, let me just say, in the Florida legislature, probably my proudest moment was actually sponsoring legislation to make our junior college in Pinellas County a state college where we offer baccalaureate degrees. And we took the junior out of it's now St. Petersburg College, and we offer the 4-year degrees in areas of need. And that was something that came from the constituents and working with the college as well. So I thought that was quite of an accomplishment because I did serve on education committees in the legislature. And Summer Blevins, who's sitting right next to me, she was instrumental as well. And I worked with the superintendent, the president of the college. So then, because due to our legislation, we have state colleges now all over Florida that offer these degrees in areas of need, specifically nursing and teaching, and then we had the management too, technology management, and now it's more than that. And my prior chief of staff um, got his 4-year degree, and now he's doing very well in the private sector. I'll name him David Peluso. He started with me as a scheduler, where he worked on the campaign in his early 20s, started as a scheduler, and then became my chief of staff, and now is doing very well in the private sector. But he got his degree from St. Petersburg College. And I understand it's the top teaching college in the state now. So that was a really good thing. And then, the another bill that comes to mind is the where they call it where a spouse and you don't have to be 100%, if there's space available, a veteran can go on the military plane free of charge. It used to be just 100% disabled, but now we have our veterans and their spouses. If there's space available, that's what it's called, space available. That came from my constituents. I know it's a small bill, but it means a lot for to some of these veterans that are on limited incomes. That came from our constituents. So there's a lot of legislation that came for our physical therapists. That was a big deal when we lifted the cap on physical therapy with regard to Medicare patients. I work with I worked with the senator from Tennessee on that, Marsha Blackburn, who was a member of the House at that time. That came from our constituents. So listening to our constituents, we truly get the best ideas coming from the people. There's no question.
Thanks. That's terrific.
No, those are really great illustrations of your activities as a legislator and lawmaker. I want to think a little bit about your earliest days in the U.S. House. So as I noted a little bit earlier, you've had one of the longest streaks in the House compared to all the members who we study, in the sense that you've been in our exceeds expectations category quite consistently. And even more so, if you really dive into the weeds a little bit, we're able to demonstrate that according to our data, you were exceeding expectations as a lawmaker, even in your freshman term. So thinking back to when you were first elected to the 110th House, 2007 to 2009, just simply speaking, you were notably more effective as a lawmaker than any other freshman minority party then, the Republican Party, member of the U.S. House or a similar one. And you've commented a bit on the importance of staff and holding on to your several prominent members of your father's staff. But at the same point, it's obvious, as you just said, quite a bit of this is a full-time, highly engaged job. And Craig and I, and I'm sure our viewers would like to hear, how did you really hit the ground running, just even in your freshman term? What did you, I guess another way of thinking about this is, if you were to think about newly elected members of the House in both parties, what advice would you give to freshmen to help them advance their ideas and become successful lawmakers from day one?
Well, to hire a good, experienced staff, particularly a chief of staff, but probably even more importantly, to hire a good district staff, mostly experienced staff, because they do the casework. And it's so very important. We're famous for, my dad did a great job with the constituent service. And a lot of it has to do with me attending events, but the casework is so very important. So you have to have qualified people and the fact that I did retain, particularly here in the district, I retained my father's staff, not all of them, but well, I would say quite a few of them. And they actually there was really no break in the service that's provided. Now, I will tell you this, and I know we're talking about earlier in my career, but my district has changed substantially due to redistricting. So most of our constituents now are new constituents, and I've been, I've been representing them for only 2.5 years now. They never really knew. My dad never represented them, so we worked really hard. And again, you got to do the job right, and not take shortcuts. And then I'm not on cable TV, very rarely. And my staff gets upset about that, but I only have so much time, and I think we just got to work at it and do what's important for your constituents. If I have something to say that I believe in strongly, then I will go on cable TV. I do the local TV because most of that is casework, reporting on casework. So I don't turn down local stations at all. But there's no substitute for constituents seeing you in person. So that's very important. But when we first started, I mentioned that I turned down financial services because I wanted to be on veterans. Uh, and then I got Homeland Security and Foreign Affairs. Well, you work with what you're dealt with. Those aren't considered. I consider veterans an A committee, but they're not considered A committees, nor is Homeland Security. But constituents care about those issues. So and foreign affairs as well. So, uh, you've got to be humble too, and not ask for. I know there are some members that complain about their committee assignments. Well, I had to wait for several years to get on energy and commerce, but I didn't get upset. I didn't start voting against the leadership to prove a point or anything like that. I just took what I had and made the best of it, and I think it was probably better for me now in retrospect that I didn't get it. Energy and commerce right away because I focused on the veterans issues and homeland security issues. So I think that's what made me effective early on.
Yeah, when we think about that transition, and certainly you were adjusting the types of bills you were putting forward to match those committee assignments and so on. From an outside perspective, I could imagine folks looking at Congress and saying, maybe they law make different around healthcare than they do around defense. Did you find in those different areas lawmaking's all just the same, or are there
Well,
quite?
lawmaking is about relationships,
Mhm.
but getting good ideas from your constituents, uh, and then also it's about forming relationships and building trust. And I have a lot of I believe that there's quite a few lawmakers on the other side, on the Democrat side, that respect me because I don't embarrass them. They know I have a heart for healthcare, and I want to help as many people as possible. Uh, and even on the other issues, now I have a very conservative record, but my reputation is working with the other side. So even when the Democrats controlled the House, I still was successful in getting legislation through. People would walk up to me and tell me, "Look, will you be the prime co-sponsor, the Republican sponsor of this particular bill? Because we know you're going to work it on your side." That's another thing. You got to be serious about getting legislation through. And I was, and whatever political capital I had, I pushed it towards the subject matter that I was working on at that particular time. And I would go up I wasn't embarrassed. I would go up to the opposing party, the Speaker of the House at that time, it was Speaker Pelosi, and ask her to help me out with these particular bills. She had, my dad had a really good reputation in Congress, so I think there were people that gave me a chance initially to see, is it going to be like his dad or is it going to be a showboat? And it turned out to be like my dad because I don't know any other way.
Yeah.
No, I mean, your comments about the importance of relationships and
Yeah.
striving towards bipartisan coalition building really resonates very nicely with us at the center. In fact, some of our published research actually highlights the benefits of bipartisan coalition building for lawmaking effectiveness, in the sense that we've demonstrated that members of the House and Senate, but the House in this case, who are able to cultivate bipartisan co-sponsors or co-sponsorship networks on their bills, controlling for other things, are notably more successful at seeing their bills advance through the legislative process.
It's the best way to do things. And being on that committee, Energy and Commerce, it's more bipartisan than most committees, and I want to keep it that way.
Well, I
So we
mean,
have a lot of really
consistent.
good
I mean, consistent
members.
with what you're saying. I mean, so an objective source, our own work has demonstrated you clearly work hard to attract bipartisan co-sponsors to your bills. Most recently, we're thinking about your recent healthcare bill on Parkinson's that had 172 co-sponsors, 2/3 of whom were Democrats, and that was when your party actually held the majority in the House. So, from our perspective, it's striking us that even though you're in the majority, you're still actively cultivating bipartisan co-sponsor networks. And related to that, I think we'd be interested, as well as other viewers, other legislators might be interested in really, what do you see as some of the advantages or disadvantages of bipartisanship in Congress, especially in contemporary times? And how do you really go about building lawmaking coalitions, either within your own party or along or across party lines, especially when you're in the minority?
Yeah. Again, building relationships with other members is very, very important. You know, we should be Americans, and we are Americans first, and then party. I don't like to embarrass people. Uh, I guess I'm a little sensitive in that I don't like to offend people, uh, but I will stand up for my particular issue. And if I say something that offends somebody, I'll go up to them. Or if I was wrong on a particular issue, I would go up to them and say, "Look, I'm sorry. I didn't mean that," or I hope you took it. I hope you didn't take it the wrong way. I mean, these are human beings on both sides of the aisle. So I think that plays a large role in it. And the fact that I think people see me as a bipartisan legislator, I'm proud of that. Um, Even within our party, I think not just our party, but Democrat Party too, it used to be a big tent, and a lot of folks need to vote their district, and they can't always vote a particular way. And, as a kid, I remember on my side of the aisle, because we were always Republican, at least I was always a Republican. Uh, my dad switched parties in 1970, but to Republican. But no, he was in an elective office. He got elected in '82. But I always knew that we had some moderate, maybe leaning people in the House, but people accepted that, and they were okay with that. And they were part of the team, and on the Democrat side, the same thing. We have to respect other people's views, and support them in some cases. But I don't see that as much as we used to have, and that bothers me a little bit. Now, I will tell you that you should be a team player too. Sometimes you may have to make a tough vote for the team,
Mhm.
but in the big picture, if it's not going to hurt your district, in the big picture, if you look at the long run is that it'll be beneficial for the country, in my opinion. So I've always been a team player, but if I have to stand up, for example, I voted for a motion to recommit years ago, and it had to do with my district. And I was on the whip team, and it had to do with the not the health insurance, but the homeowners insurance issue,
Mhm.
and we needed a bill, and I voted for NFIP, the National Flood Insurance Program. And there was a particular bill that the Democrats put forward, and I agreed to it, and I knew that it would be beneficial to my district. And I knew what the consequences would be. I would be thrown off the whip team for voting for. Back then, it meant something if you voted against a procedural vote. And I voted, and quietly, it bothered me that that I didn't vote with my party, uh, very much so. But I had to stand by my constituents, and I didn't ask for any publicity whatsoever. As a matter of fact, if I feel bad, uh,
Mhm.
but I knew I was doing the right thing. So, but I got all this press. I got all this press, And Bilirakis stands up and he's thrown off the whip team. But he stood up for his constituents, and I said that's fine. But I just thought that I need to stand up and represent my constituents, and I did. I have this slogan that volunteers came up with. We didn't pay any particular PR firm for. Gus is for us, so I have to stand by that. So it worked out. It worked out okay. I voted against the governor and he was a good friend of my family's and a great governor. But I promised my constituents when I was in the legislature I wouldn't vote for a voucher. It was the A+ plan in Florida, and this was my first term, my first major vote. Couple months after I was sworn in, and I voted against the A+ plan, which was a big deal for Jeb Bush. And Jeb Bush was a very good personal friend of the family's, and a great governor. But I had to keep my word to my constituents. Now I voted for vouchers after that, but he put some, he talked to me a couple of times, and I stood up and the Tampa Bay Times wanted to make me a hero because I voted against the A+ plan. I wouldn't return their calls. I said I'm not going to embarrass Jeff, for crying out loud, because people saw that he conversed with me, before the vote a couple of times, and there's no way. I Biden brought my family to the White House to sign the Parkinson's bill. My brother passed away from Parkinson's, and my dad has Parkinson's. My uncle passed from Parkinson's. Mother-in-law passed from Parkinson's, and it was very important to me. Anna Ashew helped me a great deal in committee. Okay, I'm not going to divulge everything that went on to protect her behind the scenes, but she helped me. She stood by me, and because we have a great relationship, so I'm sad to see her not being there in the committee. But she served her time. So in any case, Biden invited us after I passed the bill with Jennifer Wexton and another member of Congress on the Democrat side. They invited me to the White House, and they invited my family. The administration did, the Biden administration. They invited my family, my brother's family, his two daughters, and that was amazing. In the Oval Office, I could bring them to the Oval Office, and the president signed the bill. And it was just before he pulled out of the race, the presidential race. So I was one of the last people to see him. And the press came up to me and said, "What's his mental state?" I said, "Guys, are you kidding me? He just invited my family to the White House, okay, to the Oval Office. What an honor. He signed a bill that was named after my brother and Jennifer Wexton, spent a lot of time with my family. You got to go to somebody else. I'm not gonna bring it up. I just can't. That's the way I am. I was raised that way, for better or for worse."
Well, these are really helpful perspectives and the nature of how bipartisanship works and the standing up when you need to stand up, and so on. And we think about, that whole range of people from very conservative to very liberal in Congress and trying to get along there. One of the things that we've seen over time is kind of the evolution of these various ideological caucuses, in both parties. It feels like you're maybe best positioned with the Republican Study Committee along those lines. And, could you tell us a little bit about how they go about their business and what drew you to being involved with them?
Well, I will be honest with you, because of my duties on energy and commerce and chairing a particular subcommittee, a very powerful subcommittee, and then also being on the China Select Committee. I was just placed on the China Select Committee.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard for me to make a lot of the meetings, But the meetings that I have made, and Pfluger is doing August Pfluger is doing a great job. Uh, I think it's very beneficial to be on the Republican Study Committee. We actually hear they have a guest on a regular basis. Sometimes it would be a cabinet member, but also people that have particular bills uh, are heard, and they ask for co-sponsorships. So we pass the bill around, and if you agree with a particular bill, you sign the bill as a co-sponsor. You take the bill back to your staff, and you review it with your staff and possibly co-sponsor the bill. And I am a conservative, so I think it's very beneficial. And I've been on this Republican committee since the study committee since I've been in Congress. It's been very beneficial. Again, the problem is my schedule is very tight, and I don't make as many meetings as I'd like to make.
Sure.
I go to all the conference committee meetings at 9 a.m. On the day after our first vote, and it's very beneficial, very beneficial. And I only speak when I have something to say. And you got to be careful because everything that you say is reported. Everything is leaked, and I feel bad for the speaker because he really wants to set things out. But again, sometimes it's not beneficial to speak out at the conference committee because again, members, they have to be very careful what they leak to the press because it's not beneficial in some cases to the overall goal and passing the legislation.
No, I could definitely appreciate that. I'm curious, just thinking about all the years you've been in Congress, you've now experienced legislative politics and lawmaking under both Republican and Democratic majorities in the House. I mean, sizable blocks of both, actually. And I'd be curious, and we've talked a little bit about your overall perspectives on bipartisanship and the importance of cultivating cross-party perspectives and coalitions. But really, at just the individual level, do you feel that your approach to lawmaking changes in any meaningful way as you move in and out of the majority party?
I have been successful in the minority party as well as the majority party, and I mean the proof is there. So my style has not changed at all. Now, if I also know that to get a piece of legislation through, you have to govern, you have to compromise. I don't think that's a bad word. And when I say compromise, in most cases, I mean with my leadership. Because the leadership, particularly the majority leader, is a good friend of mine, very good friend of mine, Steve Scalise. If he doesn't want to agenda the bill on the floor for some reason, then it's going to die, even if I get it out of the committee. So you have to be realistic about this stuff. You're never going to get, well, Reagan said it, you're never going to get 100%, 80%. If you're with me 80% of the time, you're my friend. So I take that approach, and I'm a realist. And I think that that's why we get so much done. And again, forming these relationships, and I won't take a bill that I'm not that I don't believe in. And I care about the kids. Or I've got to get this COSA bill through. I may have to compromise a little bit to get it done, but I've talked to Ted Cruz about it. He has it, Marshall Blackburn, but it's in Ted Cruz's committee. He chairs the committee, the Commerce Committee. I talked to him at the fight the other night. I was at the UFC fight with President Trump. I have a great relationship with President Trump, by the way. But we talked COSA, we talked about his Take It Down Act, we talked about the Ticket Act. I had an opportunity because I sat next to him during the fight, Ted Cruz, and he's on board with a lot of these things. And I told him, Ted, it doesn't have to be our take-home bill. but we have to help these kids and get as much as we can. We can't wait any longer. And he agreed with me. So we strategized, and I thought it was very productive. And I got a chance to talk to RFK Jr. I talked to Tulsi Gabbard. Marco Rubio's my friend. I saw him. We talked a little bit. So it was very productive for me. And talked to Elon Musk. And you don't want to. I know this was a relaxing time, but it's also you never stop negotiating and thinking of your constituents to get good, responsible legislation across the aisle, but on the president's desk.
Yeah. So lawmaking at MMA is an increasing thing out there. So loved your reference back to Ronald Reagan and then to President Trump. And so I'm thinking about maybe you could give some perspective over time on the relationship as you've seen it between Congress and the president, and balance of power across the past 4 decades, and where do you feel we're right now in terms of the roles of Congress and the president at present?
Well, let me just say this. What President Trump is trying to do is really necessary. We've got to do something about this national debt, and try to get as close as we can to balance a budget. I know it's very difficult, but reviewing all these agencies and these budgets is not a bad thing, and it should be a bipartisan effort. I know Carter talked about it. Obama talked about it. Reagan, if you look at the videos of President Reagan, who was my idol, and of course my dad was too, but he tried to accomplish a lot of this, and he did accomplish a lot of this, and he didn't have the House at all. Now, he did have Southern Democrats that supported him, and I know some of those stories because Ralph Hall used to tell me those stories on the floor where he would call the Southern Democrats into the Oval Office. But he didn't. He only had the Senate for 2 years, so he accomplished a lot. But we have a trifecta. I know we're only 3 votes. 3-vote majority in the House, but we have a good, solid majority in the Senate. So this is our opportunity to take a look at everything. I know Social Security, Medicare is off the table. Waste and fraud and Medicaid, we need to take a look at that. And there are other issues. Now, I don't want to, veterans are number one to me. So, we want to make sure that people get the health care they've earned. And that's the case with Medicaid too. Community health centers are really part of the solution. I may file an amendment in the appropriations bill to increase the funding for community health centers, because a lot of these people will be going to community health centers. So, Reagan did it differently. And President Trump has a different approach, but I think the outcome will be the same, and hopefully we can get much more done. Again, cutting the waste and fraud in government, but retaining the services that people need, that are necessary.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like quite the challenge, right? To do this through a reconciliation project, and keeping Republicans together. It seems like a lot of times when those big packages come together, it comes together through lots of compromises and lots of additions that actually add to the debt. And now you're trying to do it in a way that's not
we're
going
frozen,
to, right?
Yeah, we're frozen. We're frozen.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we want to be mindful of your time.
Oh, are we back?
Okay.
Yep.
We're frozen.
Okay.
Yeah, we are now.
Glad to have you back. Was just thinking about the nature of building out one of those big coalitions. When you only have those 3-vote margins.
It's not easy.
How do you think about kind of keeping everybody on board all the way through?
Well, listen, I think we should be on board. I really do. I mean, this is a tough task, but it's necessary. And I'm glad we got the votes on my side to continue, with the budget resolution. And now the hard work begins. Now we'll have a meeting in Energy and Commerce. Republicans will. We haven't made any decisions yet as far as the savings in these programs. I know the majority of the savings is going to have to come from Energy and Commerce. So I take it very seriously. Brett Guthrie has done an outstanding job in that we have the input. We have the input that we deserve. And if it's not a unanimous decision as to where the savings will come from, I don't believe it'll ultimately be in the bill. If it's up to Brett. Again, the Senate, is going to protect Medicaid as much as possible. Again, we want people to get the health care, but we want to cut the waste and also the people that aren't eligible for it. That way you strengthen the program. So they're tough decisions, but they have to be made. I was a young kid, but I remember what Reagan went through too. And all we were trying to do was cut the rate of increase. But the media called it cuts, Reagan, cuts. So I've been through it before. And Jeb Bush was a strong conservative in the Florida House. And we made some unpopular decisions, but they were the right thing to do. And that's what we're here for, not to be popular, but to do the right thing and think about our country first.
Right. Well, we want to be mindful of your time, Congressman, but because of the fact that the Center for Effective Lawmaking is located at Vanderbilt and the University of Virginia, and especially given the points you raised about the importance of higher education, we wonder if you had any further particular advice or insights that you want to offer to current college students who might be watching this interview.
Well, I think that I think the students should consider a life in public service. It's not easy, but it's worth it. We have to have good people that care about the country, that care about their constituents or their future constituents, and it is a tremendous sacrifice. It's a sacrifice. Think long and hard about it. But it's a sacrifice for the families as well. But in my opinion, it's well worth it. But do something that you love, because if you love it, you're going to be good at it. And don't do it just for the financial gain. So that would be my advice. And it's always good if that you got to talk to your partner, your spouse, what have you, to make sure that she or he is on board with the decision, because otherwise it makes life a lot more difficult.
Yeah. Well, we really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you and want to thank you again for your public service. As we wrap up, we did want to offer you one last opportunity. Is there anything that we left out that's important to understand about effective lawmaking in Congress or the state legislatures, maybe that we didn't ask about, or any final thoughts?
Take it very seriously and do the right thing. But also know that you're part of one team, and that is the team that will make our country even better than what it is now.
Well, we really appreciate that sentiment as well as your service. Thanks so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much, Congressman.
My pleasure. Thank you.